The first time Detective Marla Reyes saw the mask, she almost laughed. It looked like a cheap prop from a Halloween store, sitting there on the steel table in the evidence room. An antique porcelain face, its surface crazed with fine cracks, one of which split it nearly in two. The eyes were just dark, empty holes, and the lips were curved into a faint, unsettling smile that seemed to crawl under your skin. The evidence tag attached to it was simple, recovered from 43rd Street homicide. Victim, Dr. Alan Kessler. Kessler wasn't just anyone. He was a highly respected psychiatrist, the kind of guy whose name you saw in newspapers and expert witness lists. He was found dead in his own office. The strange part, there were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, not a single visible wound on his body. Just that bizarre mask placed gently on his chest, while his own face was locked in a silent, horrified scream. Marla leaned closer, her curiosity overriding her initial dismissal. The surface of the mask seemed to shimmer under the harsh fluorescent lights, almost like it was sweating. A cold, inexplicable dread began to prickle at the back of her neck. Hesitantly, she reached out and let her fingertips brush against the cool, smooth porcelain. That's when she heard it, whispering. It wasn't coming from the room, from the vents, or from the hallway outside. The sound was inside her own head, a chorus of faint, overlapping voices speaking a language she didn't understand. She snatched her hand back as if burned. The instant she broke contact, the whispers vanished. Silence flooded her mind, leaving behind a ringing echo. That night, sleep offered no escape. She dreamed she was in Kessler's office. He was sitting in his leather patient chair, but his eyes were bleeding thick, black tears, and his mouth moved, whispering words in reverse. The walls of the office were gone. In their place, a chilling gallery of masks hung in the darkness, dozens of them porcelain, wood, leather, metal. And as she watched, paralyzed, each one began to twitch as if they were alive, as if they were breathing. Marla woke up with a gasp, her heart hammering against her ribs, the phantom whispers still echoing in her ears. The dream drove Marla deeper into the case. She couldn't shake the feeling that the mask wasn't just evidence, it was the key. She started digging through Dr. Kessler's patient files, searching for anything that might connect to this bizarre death. And she found him, Elias Vorn, a reclusive artist whose sessions with Kessler were filled with talk of an obsession with faces. Marla found his art portfolio tucked away in Kessler's records. The sketches inside were deeply disturbing. They depicted people with their mouths stitched shut, their eyes sewn closed, their skin peeled back like fruit to reveal grinning skulls underneath. A note in Kessler's handwriting read, "Elias believes faces are prisons for the soul. He wants to liberate them." Vorn had stopped attending his sessions 2 weeks before Kessler's murder. He had simply vanished. Marla got a warrant for his last known address, an industrial loft studio downtown. The moment she stepped inside, the smell of turpentine and decay hit her. The walls were covered in massive canvases. Each one was a painting of a different face, rendered in excruciating detail. Some of them looked hauntingly familiar. Marla realized with a jolt that she was looking at the faces of victims from cold cases stretching back decades. Then her eyes landed on a single, empty canvas at the far end of the room. Tacked to its center was a small, handwritten note. It said, "The final face is yours." Her blood ran cold. She spun around, her hand instinctively going to her service weapon. That's when she saw it on the floor, half hidden under a paint-splattered tarp. Another mask. This one wasn't porcelain. It was made of stretched, tanned leather that looked disturbingly like human skin. As she stared, frozen in place, she could have sworn she saw it blink. Marla bagged the leather mask and took it straight to the forensics lab. She hoped it would hold some answers: fingerprints, DNA, anything to track down Elias Vorn. But the results came back blank, inconclusive. It was as if the mask had never been touched by human hands. The technician who handled it, a bright young intern named Ravi, seemed particularly fascinated by the object. Fascinated. In the days that followed, Ravi began to change. He became withdrawn, jumpy. He stopped sleeping, claiming he couldn't close his eyes without seeing faces. He started sketching them compulsively on any scrap of paper he could find, his drawings becoming more and more frantic. Marla tried to talk to him, but he just stared at her with hollow, haunted eyes. Then, one morning, she got the call. Ravi was found dead in the lab. His own face had been removed. And in its place, he was wearing the leather mask. Marla felt a wave of nausea and fury. She pulled up the security footage from the lab's overnight camera. The video was chilling. It showed Ravi, alone, staring into the mask for hours, as if hypnotized. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., he began to whisper something to it. And then he reached for a scalpel. The video feed suddenly glitched, dissolving into a cascade of static. For 3 seconds, the image on the screen changed. It was no longer the lab. It was a dark room, its walls covered in countless masks. And then, one of them, a porcelain one with a sinister smile, slowly turned to look directly at the camera. The face on that mask was hers. The recurring image of her own face on a mask, the cold cases, Vorn's disappearance, it was all leading somewhere. Marla started digging into the history of the masks themselves, cross-referencing folklore and old police reports. The trail led her to an abandoned asylum in upstate New York, a place shut down in 1972 after rumors of horrific patient experiments. She drove out at dusk, the setting sun painting the derelict building in shades of blood and rust. She broke in through a rotted-out side door. The air inside was thick with the smell of mildew and something older, something metallic and rotten. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating peeling walls and overturned gurneys. Following a faded map of the asylum she'd found in the county archives, she made her way to the West Wing. Room 6B. Unlike the others, its door was locked tight. She put her shoulder into it, forcing it open with a splintering crash. What she found inside wasn't a patient room. It was filled with mirrors. Dozens of them, of all shapes and sizes, covering every wall. And each mirror reflected a different version of her. A young Marla in her academy uniform, an old, withered version of herself on her deathbed. One reflection was bleeding from the eyes. Another was laughing hysterically. A third was screaming in silent terror. In the exact center of the room stood a single stone pedestal. And resting on it was another mask. This one was made of shimmering, clear glass. And inside it, a dark, viscous smoke swirled and coiled like a living thing. She felt an irresistible pull, a need to touch it, to understand. As her fingers reached out, every mirror in the room shattered simultaneously, a deafening explosion of sound. And in the sudden, ringing silence, she realized she was no longer alone. He materialized from the darkest corner of the room, a tall, gaunt figure wearing a mask made of crudely stitched together patches of skin. His voice was a wet, gurgling sound, like a drowning man trying to speak. "You've seen them," he rasped, "and they have seen you." It was Elias Vorn. "What are they?" Marla demanded, raising her gun, her hands surprisingly steady. "They are the faces of death," Vorn whispered, taking a fluid, boneless step toward her. "Memories of pain, echoes of the final breath. Each mask holds a soul, captured at the moment of its departure. Each soul remembers the agony, and now they want yours." Marla fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet passed straight through Vorn's chest as if he were made of mist, embedding itself in the far wall. He let out a low, bubbling laugh, and all around her, from the shadows, from the shards of broken mirror, the whispering began again, 1,000 voices crying out her name. Marla fled the asylum, bursting out into the cold night air, gasping for breath. But there was no escape. The masks followed her. She saw them everywhere, a fleeting glimpse of a porcelain smile in the reflection of a shop window, a leering wooden face in a puddle of rainwater. She'd look at a stranger on the street, and for a split second, their eyes would be hollow, their face a perfect, unmoving mask. The whispers were constant now, a maddening hum just beneath the threshold of hearing. She stopped sleeping entirely. Food tasted like ash. Her own face in the mirror started to look alien to her. Her smile seemed to linger a moment to long after she stopped feeling it. Her eyes wouldn't always blink in sync. She was coming apart. Desperate, she paid one last visit to Dr. Kessler's widow. The grieving woman, seeing the absolute terror in Marla's eyes, handed her a leather-bound journal. It was Kessler's private log. Inside were pages filled with sketches of masks, detailed descriptions of ancient rituals, and frantic notes about a being he called the Collector. The final entry read, "The Collector is real. He wears the faces of the forgotten. He feeds on memory. And he is coming for me." Marla's hands trembled as she turned to the next page. It was blank. But then, as she stared at it, words began to bleed onto the paper, forming in what was unmistakably her own handwriting. "I am next." She knew what she had to do. There was only one place left to go. She drove back to the asylum, a grim sense of finality settling over her. When she got to the West Wing, room 6B was gone. The door, the frame, all of it had vanished. In its place was a narrow stone staircase, leading down into absolute darkness. She descended, one step at a time. The air grew thick and heavy, and the stone walls beside her seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic beat, like a giant heart. The whispering grew louder with every step, a deafening cacophony of pain and sorrow. The staircase opened into a vast, cavernous chamber, and the walls were lined with masks. Hundreds, no, thousands of them stretching up into the darkness. All of them whispering, all of them watching. In the center of the chamber stood a single, ornate, full-length mirror. She walked toward it, compelled by a force she could no longer fight. She looked at her reflection. Her face was gaunt, her eyes wide with terror. And then her reflection smiled. It was a slow, cold, predatory smile that wasn't her own. And it stepped out of the mirror. It was her, a perfect duplicate, wearing her clothes, her face. But its eyes were wrong, they were ancient and empty. Marla opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Her duplicate, her reflection, raised a hand, and in it was a porcelain mask. Cracked down the middle, smiling, it reached forward and gently placed the mask over her face. And she became one of them. The whispers in her head finally stopped, replaced by a single, silent, eternal scream. Sometime later, a new mask was found in a subway station, placed gently on an empty bench. The janitor who found it, a man named Luis, thought it was beautiful. He reached out and touched it. Luis disappeared that night. His face was never found. But back in the police evidence room, a new mask appeared on an empty shelf. It shimmered faintly under the lights. It whispered to the silence, and it smiled. Thank you so much for joining me for this dark tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more terrifying content. Let me know in the comments which part creeped you out the most. Stay safe and see you in the next one.